I will give you a totally different answer to which many will scorn or even totally discard as heresy, but yet I urge you to read at least. The Jesus of Christianity was Jewish, with name Yeshua. It is funny that Catholics or Constantine will change his name 300 years later to Isis, as the latter J was invented in 15th century. Why the name of Lord Buddha as Buddha, Indian Hindu Ram as Ram, and Krishna as exact same Krishna? Why did anyone bother to change his Jewish name Yeshua or Yahashua to Isis? Funny. Not funny, but jealousy and overly attempt to detach the person Jesus from Jewish roots so they, Romans or Catholic, can now claim that Jesus started a new religion or new covenant, which they call it New Testament, which basically writes off the Old Testament. Ha! Now that I have made my grounds straight with names, so you can imagine what is coming next in terms of practice of early church. By the way, church was never called church but rather house of prayer. Now coming to Sunday worship, as some of the writers have pointed, which I don't care who wrote in the 1st per 2nd century, but I can tell you this much, that I can write my own history the way I see it or deem to be good in my eyes. Sun is still worshipped in many cultures and certainly in Egypt for its eternal life-giving powers. The day of the Lord, by the way, which Lord? Lord Buddha, Krishna, or Lord Constantine, as the Bible clearly states, Jesus was the Lord of Shabbat. This is the cat that escaped the cage. This words or sentence really escaped the scrutiny of Catholic Bible scholars who needed to change but somehow let it out, and so now we know that Jesus, or rather Yeshua, ascended on the Shabbat, which was in the later hours of Saturday when Mary went to the tomb. Now I will have to explain a lot of why Mary's timing to visit tomb would be after sundown on Saturday or early morning of Sunday, so next time, but the fact is he, Yeshua, rose on the Shabbat. This remains a fact that early church or believers met on the Shabbat, and because as the temple was destroyed in after 70 AD, they would have no choice but to meet in synagogue or someone's house to worship and study of Torah or Old Testament. That was no different than study, prayer, breaking of bread, and giving money, just like any Orthodox Jewish synagogue worship as of today. Have you been to any Orthodox Jewish church? Go and see and then come write a review here. The modern-day Christian church has taken modern steps to redeem the hymns and songs sung by pagans and incorporate into church hymnal books, but trace back every hymn from the Methodist or other hymnal books to find where which synagogue was that song sung then. You will know much more than you do today. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Again, the books of Paul or letters of Peter, John, James were used as commentaries and read during the study or admonition of what who asked the question and why did Paul, Peter replied in that context. But today we only have the answers which are written by Paul, Peter, but do not have the questions which were asked in specific reference to these answers. Which means I can take Paul's letter to Corinthians or Ephesians and twist or turn within the context to lay out a completely different doctrine which did not even exist in the first place. What do I mean by this? Well, for example, what to eat and what not to eat. Matthew 15.19 clearly says eating without unwashed hands does not make a man unclean. Full stop. But Mark 7.19 says what goes in does not make you unclean but that which comes out of the mouth. In saying so, Jesus made all foods clean. Really? Just like that, huh? Only a stupid reader would take it out of context to claim Jesus made all foods clean, because it goes really to the contrast as to what Jesus was talking in both Matthew chapter 15 or Mark 7 chapters. He was in fact reprimanding the Pharisees of how they nullify the commandments, and then in v.19, why do you assume or think that he himself would cancel one of the greatest commandment which actually keeps the human health in check? Why would he do that? Do you think he is crazy? Or you should think that the church is preaching crazy human commands. Practices? You want to hear more, then I give you more. The early church or believers never treated the New Testament as a cancellation of Old Testament because they treated the Torah as the Testament. The Torah or the Old Testament was and is the only testament. If you don't believe, then go to a Catholic church and ask the priest this very question and you will get your peace of mind. The Apostle Paul running around Middle East with a yellow flag saying, "I am the Apostle of Christ," was not the case as it appears from reading his 13 books of doom and gloom story. Thank God he was martyred in the Roman jail and not Jewish jail, otherwise the Catholic Church would have made him even higher than Christ for Jesus' sake. I bet anyone 100 RMB Chinese money if Apostle Paul had met similar fate like Jesus in the hands of Jewish authorities, the whole Christian community would be worshipping Paul instead of Jesus. Doesn't matter about the text, a few alterations and few more additions and boom, Paul becomes the hero. My intent is, why do you treat Paul's letters as if they are like God talking, and everybody keep quiet? It is because Paul's letters offer much more flexibility to twist and turn and mutilate the scriptures, so that a new Christianity or new covenant was born from Paul's teaching a apostle, or rather the only apostle. Because all others, so-called the pillars of faith, were very jealous of Paul, right? Bullshit. Read the Acts 21 and know why Paul was rounded up, in a way so to say, by James, who was the rabbi and highest member of Sanhedrin, who heard misleading reports about Paul preaching a different gospel, and so he, Paul, had to offer sacrifice, shaving his head, and pay for the 4 devotees who were fasting on his behalf. Notice he, Paul, did not retaliate back to James or argue that he was not preaching against circumcision. Why? Then why does a Catholic or Christian church does not offer circumcision to its followers as a sign of conversion, as it was in the case of first-century believers? Again, go read the text carefully and you will find completely distressed belief than is preached today. Completely teaching human doctrines than God's doctrine. Now that you got me started, here's some more. I think I have said enough, but just one more, that the word rapture that is preached by churches doesn't exist in any Bibles. Forget about rapture. What is taught about Matthew chapter 28 then coupled with Revelation is like someone has almost created a full different fairy tale story by taking verses out of context. Folks, if you want to know the real knowledge, then go join a Jewish Orthodox synagogue and not the progressive one, to learn the correct practices and faith-following statutes which were actually practiced in the early church. Bless you.